the Within Orb podcast. Come get Within Orb. Hello, my name is Jenn Zahrt, and welcome to Within Orb, a production of the Celestial Arts Education Library, a podcast bringing people together around the love of astrology, books. Join me as I interview people about the astrology books that changed their life and practice. You can support the podcast at withinorb.com. Welcome to another episode of Within Orb, and today we're driving just north of here to Tacoma, Washington to meet with Ko. Ko, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I remember meeting you through the Northwest astrological scene, and I'm just so happy that you are, according to my experience, I mean, I'm not sure if this is the case, but I mean, I think it is actually, that you are one of the country's biggest experts on Chinese astrology.
Astonishingly enough, yes. When I started learning about Chinese astrology in 1986, I'm going, well, I've got to study this stuff so that I can become reasonably expert. And I kept on expecting the rest of the world to catch up. And with the exception of certain people who knew the tradition better than I did, but didn't extend it any further, people aren't catching up. And I'm going, well, that sure feeds my ego.
Yeah. Was Chinese astrology your first kind of astrology that you learned about?
Very first. Prior to 1986, in fact, 10 years prior to 1986, I was someone who hated astrology. I thought it was nonsense. I thought it was total nonsense.
What converted you?
First of all, this is very weird. Talk about people who are anti-astrology. I got into philosophy through a very strange source, Ayn Rand.
Controversial.
Very rationalistic and all of this other stuff. Well, the thing is that you study one philosophy, it's not good enough. So I wanted to branch out further. One of the ways I branched out further is I studied Taoism, yin and yang, because I was trying to make myself more healthy, and I was learning about macrobiotic diet. And macrobiotic diet automatically deals with yin and yang and other stuff like that. And that moved me away from that sort of toxic hyper-rationalism that Rand has. Not that I disdain her for everything. I just have disagreements now. Anyway, by 1986, I was working as an artist, drawing He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And there were a lot of Korean assistant animators in the place. And this rather attractive young woman was making odd marks on a sheet of paper on break. And I'm going, Hyun-suk, what is this? And she says it's Chinese astrology. And as I'm listening to her, I'm going, wait a minute. I don't believe in astrology at all, but I do know Taoist philosophy. She's explaining an astrology that I already understand it because I already understand the terms. I don't care whether I believe in astrology or not. This is interesting. And that's what got me into it.
Wow. So what was the first book about astrology that you read then?
Well, the very first book, keeping in mind that I was trying to find anything about Chinese astrology I could, it was a book, darn it, I forget the title, but the author was Jean-Michel Huon de Kermadec. And it was something about, I think it was The Way of Chinese Astrology. It was translated into English by some fellow named Derek Poulsen. So that was the very first astrology book I ever read seriously. I mean, they were available to me. But again, I had a mild little prejudice towards Western astrology. Not because I didn't think it was worth it, but because, well, I started out looking at odd sidetracks from regular astrology. So that I'm going, well, I want to learn that stuff first, and then I can go to the large amount of information that's available that everyone else knows. So I was hitting obscure sources first. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah, but there's also not that many books about Chinese astrology in existence in English.
Even now, that is true.
Yeah.
Even now, that's true. I mean, I had a book that was published in time for the 2008 UAC, but it was a total of 50 copies.
Wow.
Only 50 copies.
So very sold out.
I mean, whatever didn't sell out, I mean, there's very few of them left.
Right.
The book that I've got with Revelore Press that teaches, Chinese astrology from, the 4 pillars Chinese astrology is somewhat condensed from that. I'd like to think that it explains more clearly, more simply, one does what one can.
Right. And that'll be coming out this July.
Well, that'll be nice.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Okay. So I usually ask people, if you were stuck on a desert island, what 3 astrology books would you bring, assuming you had an ephemeris? So yeah, what would they be, Ko?
Well, as you already know, I have a streak of arrogance in me. Truthfully, I would not bring other books, even though there are lots of books that I esteem. I would not bring 3 books of anybody else's books to a desert island. I would bring a ton of spiral notebooks and a ton of pens, and I would write my own.
So we are on the precipice of 3 brand new books that you would be writing there. So let's think about what they could be. What books do you have in you that aren't written yet?
Okay, first of all, I followed Project Hindsight, and I was fortunate enough to know Robert Schmidt personally. And toward the end of his recording career, he didn't have books, he had recordings of meetings. So he was convinced at the end of his life that he discovered who turned Greek astrology from the lore that they had from Babylon and whatever, and turned it into a utter complete system. And he thought that, first of all, it was probably Eudoxus of Cnidus who did this, who was younger than Plato, older than Aristotle, and probably knew both men. So one of my desert island books would be, how do we extend Plato's axiomatic concept of same and other into extending astrology further? For instance, Schmidt already said, well, okay, Uranus is a transcendental sun, Neptune is a transcendental moon, and Pluto is a transcendental Mercury. This is not the same as, for instance, the modern, which I'm not repudiating, mind you, that Pluto is a co-ruler of Scorpio. That's a different thing altogether. But what does it mean to be a transcendental sun, a transcendental moon, and a transcendental Mercury? I have had to extend that. Well, the thing is that the transcendental sun means we've gone beyond identity, which is solar. What's more same-like than identity? And Schmidt said the common. It's all the same to me. That's what commonness is all about. And I'm going, well, okay, if, time goes slack, everything's all common, what's so revolutionary about that? Well, one way to put it is, what happened when Uranus was discovered? Well, they had the Critique of Pure Reason in 1781 that was Immanuel Kant. But something else, the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence had in its document, all men are created equal. Now, we would say all people are created equal. All men are created equal. The thing is that back then, you're saying, well, what do you mean all men are created equal? Are kings and slaves the same? Are men and women the same? Are people in Africa the same as people in Europe? The list is endless. But the idea that all human beings have the same essential worth and should be equally treated in the eyes of the Lord and in the eyes of the law, that's revolutionary. And I had to come up with that to join together with what Schmidt was talking before I could make sense out of it. And I would extend this to Neptune, to Pluto, to Chiron, to Eris, and to Sedna. So that's what I would do in the book. I would extend these things. I already have ideas floating in my head.
Amazing.
And notes already written.
And so this would be your extension of Schmidt's interpretation of Eudoxus.
Yeah.
Love it. When you said this, when you started saying something about Eudoxus, I was like, oh, I hope you're writing a screenplay.
Oh.
I really would love to have a movie about Hellenistic astrology. Why doesn't that exist yet? Eudoxus the mad genius coming up with the system. I want to see the camera shots for that.
Oh my goodness.
So I just added to your homework on the island.
Yeah, well, I have fiction in me, but they're nothing like astrology.
Okay.
Underneath, they're informed by it, but I don't mention it at all.
Well, I might have to visit you on the island so we can collaborate on that one.
Incidentally, the island I should be on.
Yeah.
Obstruction Island in the San Juans.
There you go. Exactly. I love that.
Because I actually spent 2 weeks in a vacation as a teenager on Obstruction Island with other people. They had to bring drinkable water in by boat because there's no plumbing on Obstruction Island.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, I would wave at you from point no point across the sound.
Okay. There you go.
These are actual places, people. Okay. So that's book one, extending Eudoxus into the edges of the solar system. So where would we go with the next book in your mind that you're going to create on this island?
Well, having given instruction on what Chinese astrology, the 4 pillars Chinese astrology is all about, I would like to have a book full of examples of famous people. And see, the 4 pillars actually extraordinarily well explains why these people behave the way they do. Now, the 4 pillars is something that predates modern Western astrology. They used to use it in the past for partner matching, and it can still be used that way. I mean, if you say that modern Western astrology is heavily invested in sun signs, and I'm not sneering at sun signs one bit, okay? I'm not. But the thing is that a sun sign is like saying that's your solar month. That makes perfect sense. The thing is that the 4 pillars is like saying you've got a solar year, a solar month, a solar day, and a solar hour. And each of these can be characterized behaviorally just as well as your sun sign can. If you have all of the possible 4 pillars combinations, it isn't 12, it isn't 144, it's 518,400 possible combinations.
Oh my God.
I would like to think that 518,400 possible combinations with a book full of examples might even convince Neil deGrasse Tyson.
This would be a book that is literally taller than you.
Much taller than me.
It would be like writing the encyclopedia of examples.
Yeah. And the thing is that, I mean, the 4 pillars is so simple to remember that even I, at this point, I can quote Robin Williams. I can quote Donald Trump. I can quote Albert Einstein. There's tons of people I can quote if I had the memory capacity I used to.
You say it's very simple, this 4 pillar system. Can you transmit just a quick tidbit so that listeners can jump into the 4 pillars a bit?
Okay. Well, first of all, I am one of these weird people who have justified, I may be the only one who's justified, that the Western signs and the Chinese animals actually should be regarded as the same. There are calculation reasons why they don't do it, because they calculate the solar months in China differently than we do in the West. I consider that to be a conceptual mistake. They should be coincident. So, for instance, Aquarius is the same as tiger. Pisces is the same as rabbit. Sheep is the same as Cancer. And if you describe them, they match up. So that's a beginning way to do this. Now, the thing is also, if you've got a tiger year, well, there's 5 different kinds of tiger year. There's water tiger, wood tiger, fire tiger, earth tiger, and metal tiger. And each one of those elements means something in Taoism. So that's how I complicate these things. But I mean, I'm not saying anything that people in China haven't known for centuries.
Right. Well, in your article for the Mountain Astrologer that came out a couple of years ago, you were also talking about the beauty of turning 60, which I love because I love that decade of people. When I have clients who are in their 60s, it just lights me up because in this 4 pillar system, the 60th year is the first year that you would embark upon your birth, animal, and element.
That is correct.
And you would have gone around all of the other elements and animals in turn. And when you wrote that, I was just like, this is why it's the golden years, is that it's like you're not old enough to have health be a problem yet, hopefully. And you've done it. So you've it's like a rebirth. Like Chiron return is for everybody post 77, talking about 1977 when it was discovered, not about your age. But, it's like that happens around the age of 50. But it's like, no, the 60s, that's the deal. That's really this beautiful kind of, let's do the zodiac again. Ideally you would live to be 120, because you could do it twice, like one round, just getting a sense of things. And it's like, I really like this year.
Well, the most used Time Lord system in Jyotish runs to 120 years. And it is also possible that only one person known to Western science has lived past 120 years anyway. So that's another corroboration of 120 being an appropriate age limit for human beings in our current age.
But Uranus came in and cut it off at 84, so the average went down.
On average, yeah. Also, I will throw in, since you're talking about ages and still being vital in all of this stuff, I may have told you that I've also taken Ptolemy's Ages of Man.
Yes.
And turned it into a 4-level Time Lord system.
Oh my gosh, go on.
But the thing is that each one of these Ages of Man actually corresponds to a specific solar return. From birth to age 4 is the period of the moon for everybody at a certain level. But the thing is, it's from birth to the 4th solar return. Well, the thing is that age 68 to age 98 is the period of Saturn for everybody. And I have entered it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm noticing physically I'm starting to very slowly fall apart. I'm not screaming about it, but I'm noticing it. You can't not notice these things.
Right. But you said to 98, that's a 30-year timeline. I didn't think Ptolemy put a cap on it. Maybe he just didn't expect people to make it that long.
Well, the thing is that it's just 30 years is the period of Saturn.
Yes, but then what would happen after 98?
My thought on the matter is this. After 98, you enter your second childhood.
After 98.
After 98.
You go back to moon.
Yeah, you go back to moon. It's your second childhood.
Or if you get downloaded onto a hard drive to extend the longevity of your brain and leave your body behind, it's the Uranian period.
Oh, goodness.
I'm talking about the future, Ko.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I guess you could go either way, because you're either going to be, listen what they call it. It's a nursing home.
Yeah.
I forget that old. I don't know.
I want to welcome everyone to the Significant Sources Salon.
We are honored to have Dr. James Dotson host our Significant Sources Salon, guiding you through the books that have been most impactful in the world of astrology.
We have curated several books which I think will be interesting, books that you might not have picked up yourself because they perhaps seem old or daunting, and we will make them accessible to you.
The salon meets for 90 minutes every month with a summer break.
For more details, go to www.CAELi.Institute.
Join today, and we will see you there. Wow. Ptolemy Ages of Man into a Time Lord system.
Yeah, incidentally, since we're right here, I'll be real quick about this. Donald Trump, his 68th solar return was in 2014. You look at the transits at the beginning of that Time Lord system, keeping in mind that theoretically, the transits at the beginning of a Time Lord system last throughout that particular period.
It's like an ingress chart.
It's an ingress chart. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is that he enters the Saturn period, and his Saturn is at something like 23 degrees and 48 minutes or something like that in Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on his 68th solar return, Jupiter is at 23 degrees and I think 00 minutes of Cancer. He has an extremely close Jupiter conjunction to his natal Saturn. So that means, and I'm not fond of this, that means that for the 30 years of his Saturn period, he's going to have an extremely exalted Jupiter right on that Saturn.
Don't you think that could be the judges?
Well, it's one of the reasons why, in spite of the fact that he lies a lot. I mean, he stretches the truth all the time. There's limits to how much justice he's been brought to. Because he's got that Jupiter really helping him out.
Would you direct the ingress chart, though, seeing as it's been 10 years?
I would consider that fruitful, but I don't do it.
Okay.
Notice that.
I love that.
It's worth doing, but I don't do it because there's other things that I'm doing.
It's a great answer, and that's the perfect spirit of the whole work, isn't it? Is to say, like, yeah, you could try that. Have fun.
Well, the thing is, there are other people who will try that. There are people who will try that.
Absolutely.
And it's worth it, dang it.
Anyway, we digress. So would that Ptolemaic Ages of Man as a Time Lord system be your third book that you would write?
That would be a reasonable one, yes. I mean, I'd probably have 24 books to write, but that's a good one.
Oh, 24. This is amazing. I actually might drive you out to this or boat you out to this island on purpose to get these books out of you. In the meantime, I have 2 of them coming out through Revelore this July, so that's exciting.
And I will tell you one other thing. I'm already writing a 4th book.
Oh, good.
I am already writing a 4th book.
Share it, if you're ready.
Well, it's primarily about how do I philosophically extend the planets, which I've already just talked to you about. But it's also, to the extent that it's possible and feasible, most people, when science confronts astrology, the astrologers have to explain, okay, well, why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Inevitably, it sounds apologetic no matter how truthful you are being.
Yes, I hear that.
The thing is that this 4th book, for better or worse, I'm going on the offensive. I'm pointing out to scientists, well, okay, I'm not denying science. I'd be stupid to deny science. But there are things that you do that, I'm sorry, by your own standards are stupid.
Whoa.
There are other bodies of knowledge that you are saying science overrides them. I'm saying, no, they don't. History is just as important as science. Morality and religion are just as important as science. Philosophy is just as important as science. And dang it, astrology is just as important as science. And I'm willing to back that up in a book.
Nice.
On the 2nd book that you've got with Revelore, I already started to go there. But I'm realizing that I have to hit it deeper. That's what this 4th book is about.
Lovely. And all of these books, like every book that we have, every book that we talk about, and all the books we've talked about today that aren't in existence yet, this is how books start, is that it's a conversation that needs to be had. And you bring in your sources, like partners in a conversation, right? You're going to resurrect Eudoxus and Schmidt in their first book there with these extension of the planets. And it kind of crystallizes into this immortal form. It's truly an art form of making something last the ages.
We are both that way in that we believe that even though there are people who argue that once it's on the internet, it'll last forever. Well, the thing is that yes and no.
No, it's got to be in a book.
I still prefer to have books too.
Yeah.
Period. I think that a book is something that will never and should never be considered obsolete. Period.
It's a very smart technology. Papyrus, you have to roll out and roll back up. And the book, you flip the page and it's very, portable and it's lasted. People thought ebooks would take over and they do well, but, people want to have books.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
There's something about that, and they're little companions. They're tactile and they feel good. And there's something about also like getting towards the end of a book and the pages go from all being in one hand and being in the other. And it's like, oh yeah, I've made progress. I can see. Whereas if you're scrolling, you have no concept of where you are.
Oh, no. When I got my first computer in 1989, I was overjoyed to have the ability to have type as big as 72 points. Beautiful on the screen.
Well, pixelated though.
Well, no, but have that printed out on a sheet of paper. And I'm going, this is not that far from actual printed books. I mean, now just type alone is so beautifully and easily done now.
Yeah.
And having them in book form now is glorious. That's something that I've never gotten over and I've always exulted over. Always.
Amazing. So where would you point someone if someone comes up to you and says, Ko, I want to learn what you know about astrology? How would you get them into astrology?
Well, it's been mostly not books. I would advise them to listen to the lectures of Robert Schmidt.
That's fair. It's an unwritten book, but still yet a transmission. Sure.
Yeah, it's a transmission. I mean, he was somebody who said that Plato said that the spoken word is the living word and the printed word is the dead word.
Oh, gosh. That strikes.
No, that's why Plato made his writings into dialogues to try to keep them as alive as possible. So there is that. So I would have them listen to Schmidt. To learn Jyotish, I mean, I have the Sharma edition of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, which is 1,244 pages long in 2 volumes. And I can't claim to read more. I have read more than a fifth of these books, but everything that I've written, I respect because it's the tradition. The fact that I've deviated from the tradition in Jyotish doesn't mean that I don't respect what came before me. I still do.
Yeah.
And as for how to learn from the 4 pillars, well, I got to get off my butt. I have to provide them because, to be honest, most of the books on 4 pillars in English in print were mostly historic and did not tell you how to use them at all. They weren't instructional. They weren't functional.
Right. Not textbooks.
Not really.
Yeah.
They weren't.
Well, thank you for your work and everything that you do.
Well, you're welcome. Thank
for
you.
holding the tradition in this way. Where can people find you?
I will be coming to the NORWAC myself this upcoming month. And just to be very, very interesting, if they're going to be seeing me at the NORWAC, they will be seeing my feminine alter ego. In spite of the fact that I have a deep, deep voice, I have a feminine alter ego. Her name is Francine. And to be honest, for the past 3 NORWACs, I have been far more Francine than I have been Ko.
That's amazing. Yes, I remember sitting next to you as Francine.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't look like Jennifer Lawrence, but I pass well enough.
Very cool. And then on the internet, you have a YouTube channel, no?
Yes, I do. Radical Skies.
Okay. Well, everybody go subscribe to Radical Skies if you've enjoyed this
thanks.
conversation with Ko Francine. And thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to leave us with? Any cone?
As someone who has been all of my life reluctant to advertise myself, thank you for allowing me to advertise myself in a way that I hope entertains your listeners.
It's so wonderful to have you on, and I love the way your mind works.
Oh,
so
thank
I'll
you.
be seeing you very soon, even though you're next door in Tacoma.
That's
Thank
right.
you so much, Ko. Have a wonderful day.
You too. You too.
Thank you for listening to Within Orb. To learn more about the Celestial Arts Education Library, or to become a member, visit our website at CAELi.Institute. That's www.caeli.institute. If you enjoyed this episode, please help spread the word. Follow or subscribe to Within Orb in your podcatcher of choice, rate it 5 stars, or write us a happy review. This helps others find the show. We also want to give a big thanks to the indie band The E-Block for contributing their song Wake Up for our intro and outro music. You can find them at their website, eblockband.com. This is Jenn Zahrt, signing off for now. See you next time.